Hello, YouTube world. Welcome to the Travel with T-Bone show, and I'm going to talk a little bit about esports. I've lived in Southeast Asia, and so esports is kind of something a lot of people think of as a reason to go to Southeast Asia. They think of Korea as like the video game mecca for computers, at least of the world. China has a pretty big esports scene. And then Japan is kind of known for its fighting games, video games, and all sorts of other weird sort of technology. And so it's kind of been an interest of mine for a very long time. When I started out being interested in the G4 show called Arena, where there's a bunch of teams playing Unreal Tournament 2003. And then I think it moved to 2004. And then the network went to the gutter. And here we are in 2019. Before that, I was interested, so I kind of was always interested in esports, and I was interested, with LCS. I got interested around season 2, season 3. I remember first playing League of Legends and everybody talking about Moscow 5 and how they were this enigma and amazing and the best there ever was, etc., etc. At this time, I didn't even know who CLG was, but just the name M5 would come up all the time in chat boxes, and it was interesting. It was very intriguing, very exciting for me to actually want to get into this League of Legends esports. At the time, this was very hard, actually, I think, to get into. Esports, I think, has always had a problem of accessibility. And I think it comes from a multitude of factors, and why I think this is going to create what's going to create the bubble, why it's going to pop, etc., etc. And so this is going to be my thoughts as a casual viewer. And the first thing is accessibility. Esports kind of has always had an accessibility problem. First off, the leagues themselves are kind of fragmented. I remember back in the days of Season 2, Season 3, there was DreamHack and there was, ESL. They did events for League of Legends, and then Riot, I remember introducing the LCS at the time, which was a very new and exciting thing. What the LCS did really well is it actually made getting into and watching matches for League of Legends a lot easier, because instead of having to bounce between ESL and keep track of their calendars or DreamHack's calendars or whoever else, I think MLG Gaming had some League of Legends stuff. Man, this has been a while thinking about it. But at those days, it was really hard to keep track of like esports matches, and because of that, it was easy to get lost and kind of pulled away from it. And that accessibility, I think, is one of the big problems with esports. It's always changing, always flip flopping. And as a consumer, a casual consumer like myself, you look at it, it's fun, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's really kind of hard to keep up with. The LCS, I think, solved a lot of those problems by having one channel where everything happened in one space. And it was great because then you knew every week you could turn in at this time, watch your favorite teams, you could watch some shit talking where Double Lift would actually go on unfiltered, and the interviews weren't manufactured, and it felt like it was something really special. You could watch really bad teams like Vulcan, have their ADC Zuma, who was just kind of below average, like pop off one match, and then he was so excited, and everything was like really new and exciting, and I don't know, it was just cool. I mean, you'd never seen anything with so much hype behind it. And I think that's why esports popped off and it grew, because it was the new, fresh, trendy thing. But a new game comes along, and that makes it so everything kind of has to restart again. The leagues have to be restarted. Who is holding the leagues and hosting the leagues? Where can you find the information? All of this stuff is reset, and you have to do it all over again. And this is going to change every single time. For me, this makes it very hard to adapt to esports because the game is always changing, and it's always going to change because esports is dependent on the video game itself, and the video games in general are always a trend, right? Video games from the very beginning have always been a trend sort of thing. With Pong, there was Pong, then Pong clones, Pac-Man, then Pac-Man clones, Super Mario Brother clones, and you can go down the list all throughout video game history to see that there's usually one major breakthrough in a genre or a new genre emerges, and then after that genre emerges, a ton of clones appear, and then that eventually loses popularity, something new comes in, takes its place, and that's kind of the progression we've seen with video games on consoles and computers throughout the entire history, and I think it's going to continue to that because it's a form of entertainment and people want to be entertained. With esports, it was entertaining, but now it's kind of had its run, especially with League of Legends. Overwatch definitely had its run very, very quickly, and people, I think, are walking away. When I first went to South Korea, this was back when there was OGN, and I think it was Najin Whiteshield who was playing, and they had a mid laner Goong, and it was like a best of 5 match. I'm trying to remember who they went up against, but they went into a blind pick. It was really interesting. Anyway, it was a great time. It was very exciting. I met some people. I met Monte Cristo. I met Doa. I called him Joba Commander. He got pissed. I looked like a fucking retard because I was. But it was very exciting. I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. And then I went back to Japan at the time when I was living there, working as a translator. And then went to Korea again. And then I went to esports matches a little bit more. And each time I went, I just kind of felt less and less excited. And I noticed that there was less and less people. The audience size was only like 200 people in like a stadium that was a bit nicer, kind of movie theater-esque. At first it was like crappy green chairs, and then it was like these nicer things. But the audience didn't really want to go to all of it. And I thought, well, and what was strange was it was the end of the gauntlet, and it was the Samsung team that ended up winning Worlds that year with Crown, who was the mid laner. And I thought that was really curious. I remember thinking, that's really, really curious. And people in the crowd were players like Ryu and stuff like that, which was cool to see. But at the same time, it's a little concerning because it should just be all regular fans. But a lot of people weren't actually going. Now, when I went to China, I saw the League of Legends World Championship, the quarterfinals in Guangzhou with World Elite playing against Cloud9. And obviously I'm cheering for Cloud9 and going crazy, and Jensen did really well, and Impact played nicely, and I saw them like up against I saw them and I pressed against the glass of their van, and they all looked sad, but I gave like Jensen double thumbs up. I was like, yeah, that was great, because they did really, really well. Even though they lost, it was exciting. But what was peculiar once again, was the crowds weren't showing up for the quarterfinals, and a lot of the stadium was empty. Because I think my thoughts as a customer is that the trend is kind of moving on. People are looking for the next exciting thing, and whether that's a game, another piece of entertainment, I think that's something you have to think about as esports. And because of that, because it's a trend, returning to the esports and returning to that game is kind of, I don't know, it's going to be strange. I think you'll get some people who will want to go back to the game for nostalgia or something else, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are just going to move on with their lives. And so, what do I think this means in the end? I think that, as the new trend emerges, like there is now Fortnite taking over League of Legends, that's going to be the hot thing. But I think people will not return to League of Legends, just like they did not return to StarCraft, just like they did not return to Quake. And if there's a World of Warcraft esport again because of World of Warcraft Classic, I think that'll be interesting. But if you look at the people returning to like RuneScape, the numbers have gone up from previous years, but I mean, it's not what it used to be. And I think the same will be true with World of Warcraft. I think a lot of people will just kind of move on with their lives. And I think this is going to give us where we are with esports now. I think esports is kind of in this spot where it's almost in the mainstream. But I don't think it'll ever be mainstream because I think it's such a specific audience. A lot of people say it's the 1834 to 34-year-old demographic, but I really disagree with that. The reason why is I'm 29, and at 29, I've got a lot of other things like I'm more concerned about. I'm engaged, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a wife, and then we're probably going to have some kids. We're going to move to America and, do something else with our lives that's going to require our time and attention. Because of that, I'm not going to be alone. There's going to be other players, other casuals, if you will, that are going to do something similar. Get married, have kids, think about their career. Instead of giving a day, 2 days, 3 days of the week all day to watch esports matches. So I think that's kind of where it's going to be. I think the market for esports will always be a bit of a niche market, maybe 18 to 25, 26. But at a certain point, your esports players have to, and consumers kind of have to go on with their lives into their career and, move on. And because the games are dependent, the esport is dependent on the game itself, there's not a whole lot to return to. I think it's fun while it lasts, and if you can, definitely enjoy it, because it really is something special when you can get into like the zeitgeist of a particular game and you see players playing at their absolute best. And that's something I think we should all remember as viewers of esports, is to enjoy it, love it, and enjoy your time in the sun while the game is hot. Anyway, that's all for the Travel with T-Bone show. I hope you liked it. Have a nice day, and wherever you are, keep on trying, jayo jayo, and fighting.